Hi YouTube, it's daily update time. I'm just looking through your questions that you put on my Facebook students group as well as in my Patreon page for today's topics. And one of you asked about my book in the writing, which is called A Course in Forgiveness. You wanted to know more about it. I discussed in my coronavirus part 2 channeling yesterday, which is now available on Patreon as well. The 7 densities that we're living in and all the different things that means in society with what we're seeing and how that correlates. What we didn't get too much of a chance to discuss is where we're going with that in terms of what spiritual purposes each plane of existence has to provide for us, and what the challenge is, what the mastery is in that for us with where we're going spiritually in New Earth. And that's what the book is about. It's about how Earth really came into existence, kind of what we forgot about. This is called the Great Forgetting, which is where we were at that time, when we forgot the power of who we are, what technologies were used at that time, how Earth started, what was misinterpreted about some popular religious texts such as the Bible, and the metaphoric content as well, and the literal content of certain things that were put into sacred texts. It covers that. It is a sacred text, and that means it's channeled information. It involves 7 technologies that we're going towards. From these 7 densities, there's different things that each of us are learning. I see most people learning in the first 2 densities of forgiveness and acceptance, which is the most of what's going on in 3D right now. 4th dimension primarily is operating in either allowance and trust or flow. That's something else discussed in the book. 5th density is operating in compassion and love. And 6th and 7th are operating in celebration and grace. So these are the 7 things, the 7 technologies that are going to be available on Earth. So again, forgiveness, acceptance, allowance and trust, flow, compassion and love, celebration, and ultimately grace. So the Great Forgetting, which is something that happened, and there were many things that led up to the Great Forgetting, some grand cover-ups at that time as well. And now the Great Remembering, how to remember where we are, and which technologies help us with that. There's just a lot in it, and I've been writing it for a couple of years now. I've just been so busy trying to get classes to you about it, and classes to you and channelings to you about why we're here on Earth and what we're mastering. So it's been a long time in the making. So my plan is over the course of this next year to finish it up for you. And I really hope to be getting back to work on it soon. So that's what that's about. In terms of your other questions, let's scroll through them. Another one here from Luke. What happens to technology and society as we know it in the Great Remembering? Some of it is deemed completely irrelevant. Just we don't really need certain things, particularly 5G won't be a part of that because it will be scientifically evidenced that it causes great harm and it'll be pulled off the market. And that's for people operating in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th densities. For the primarily people still kind of in 3rd dimension, not density. There's a difference. Follow the Seth material and my Seth channelings to know more about the difference. But in the 3rd dimension, people are still working on forgiveness and acceptance. And 5G may still be a part of that because what you focus on is what you attract. And if you keep focusing on what you don't want, the universe just hears, I want that. And then that happens. For purposes of forgiveness and empowerment, and then acceptance of your own technologies and of your own remembering of who you are in that empowerment. So everyone's experiencing something different. We discuss this a lot, in the COVID-19 part 2 channeling, which is again now on Patreon. I'll link it below. And some of it was also discussed in my recent Yeshua channeling, which is now available for replay on my website. I'll link it below. But ultimately speaking, some technologies will be deemed absolutely powerless, and some will continue to be used. Like, we will have an internet. It'll just be really different, and not harmful, with where we're going. So there's that. And there'll be many technologies that are expanded upon and made better. And there will be remembering of technologies that are currently not being fully utilized, like light technologies and vibrational medicine. That's going to come back as we remember who we are and the power of who we are, that we used to use those technologies. I'm going to be teaching some classes about those technologies through the ancients, our elders, in May. You'll find that on Patreon. I'll talk more about it later, but that's going to be there in May because you guys are asking. So let's look through some more of your questions. When will it be suitable to hold events in the UK again? There's a difference between when it actually is suitable for people who don't have fear and who aren't operating in fear, and for people who do. So there's a difference between that, and there's a difference also between when it's actually suitable if you're in the no fear density, and when your government is telling you it's suitable. That's all that I'm going to say about that, because YouTube likes to yank videos down and block them if you say otherwise. It's just the truth. You guys see it happening everywhere. How different does a new culture look like? That depends on what degree, what density you're operating in, to answer that question. So it looks powerfully different for people in 5th, 6th, and 7th density, because you're operating in intentional community. You're less reliant on currencies and more reliant upon each other. There's true oneness and connection, and it's a compassion-based community. So there's no things like, there's no need for things like allopathic medicines. Maybe people in the 50 community would go to a surgeon or something, or get a cast if they broke a bone. But other than that, they really wouldn't need things. They would primarily avoid allopathic treatment for a good reason, because it's just not a part of their density or understanding, not out of fear. All right. You're interested in hearing more about grace? Join my class in May. We're going to talk about all 7 densities and the technology of grace then, and all these technologies that's in my book. We're going to be discussing that in my Course in Forgiveness class in May. I'll link it below. It's just at Patreon for all tier levels. Okay. Another question here from Jeffrey. You have warned us about the destructive effects of 5D, including deoxygenation, and you have recommended people refuse to use it. Yes. Can you help us convince the large numbers of people required? No. I cannot take someone out of the power of what they're experiencing. And if they want to continue to utilize it, they will continue to see the effects of it, because that is their chosen path. So, and insofar as documentation on that, you see it in your health right now. Your body is the documentation of that, okay? And you can start to see that. The more people begin to bring awareness and put forth that awareness into society, it will be tested, and that evidence will come out in the future. Right now, of course, the governments in the 3D don't want to test that because it's not financially lucrative to them. So, yeah. The more people just stop using it, the more those tests will come out. So just stop using it, and those tests will come out, because the government will be curious why we stopped using it. And then they'll find something else that's less harmful, because we as consumers refuse to consume something that's harmful. Then we get to be a part of the creation of something that is more compassionate. Okay? Yeah, that's up to you guys. All right, we can't make people or convince people otherwise. All right, have a good day. I'll see you soon.